All right, we're going to bring it home now. Up next is Natalie Nixon, PhD, and she's the president and creative strategist for Figure Eight Thinking and the author of The Creativity Leap. Natalie is now going to teach all of us how to go back to school and deploying creativity to change up the rhythm of our lives for the better. And this is important according to the study that we just did around back to school, because 66% of our respondents replied that their routines have become even more important during COVID-19, and they seek ways to change them up now more than ever. Natalie will bring her interesting background in anthropology, fashion, higher education, and creative consulting in her teaching. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank you so much. Hey, Andrea. Hey, Gary.
Natalie, it's such a pleasure. Thanks for closing us out. There's so much I want to get to, so I want to go a little more rapid fire on the closeout. Talk to me about your journey, because it's a cool one. I think it might inspire some people, because I do think COVID is challenging people to think about if they want to make a change in the journey. And I think yours is really, really fun to think about.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. I have an incredibly loopy background. I have a background, as Andrea mentioned, in anthropology and fashion, but I think my loopy path is because of the grace of advice from my parents. I had a first world problem when I was 19 years old, sophomore year in college. I had to declare a major, and I wanted to make sure I got a good job at the end of a very expensive education. And I called home in tears, and I was very apologetic about everything that was boring and that sounded impressive. And they said, well, what are you interested in? And I began to apologetically explain about anthropology and Africana studies. And at the same time, this is in the 80s. This is in the days when there was a phone in the kitchen, right? And a phone in their bedroom. And at the same time, they said, that's what you should study. And I said, really? And they were like, yeah, that's what you should study. And my dad said, Natalie, if you study what you love, you will have to turn down opportunities. And it was like this load lifted off my shoulders. And so I have never had a 5-year plan. I have literally, when I hit a crossroads where that nudge is like, I'm not excited about this work anymore, I'm not passionate about it, I have to check myself. I heard you and Tabitha reference that earlier. And I had to do some really deep work to follow my heart. And it's ultimately in our life, following our heart is more efficient, but it's really hard also, but it's totally worth it. So I think right now, in this time of COVID, it's what I've been calling the value of the pause. And it's an incredible opportunity to reorient and reroute. And it's both terrifying and exhilarating. I posted something recently that if you're 50% terrified and 50% exhilarated, then leap, because the terror anchors you and the exhilaration is what keeps you buoyant and optimistic. And I mean, does
that tie into the book, The Creative Leap, or is there something different there?
Thank you for asking. So yeah, the Creativity Leap is about why and how creativity is this essential competency for right now in this fourth industrial revolution, as well as for the future of work. I got so tired of hearing people say, oh, I'm not a creative type, as if it was a certain special tribe of people. To be human is to be hardwired to be creative. And I define creativity as toggling between wonder and rigor to solve problems. So you're hearing this theme in me I have a very hybrid background. I like the juxtaposition and the counterpoint between, at a crossroads, following your heart and doing what's practical, wonder and rigor, exhilaration and terror. In my life and in my world, the gray happens. The gray is reality. It's black and white is not a reality, but it's navigating the ambiguity and getting more comfortable with it. And creativity thrives in ambiguity and mess. And we've got a lot of mess right now. So that's why I'm really passionate about leaving people with a playbook, a roadmap for exercising creativity, whether you're an attorney, environmentalist, a plumber, a stay-at-home parent. It's essential right now.
Let's talk about the living classroom.
Yeah.
So what is your hot take, perspective, expertise on I mean, we really wanted to close with you because I thought there'd be a lot of practicality in this. So I'm excited to hear myself. So what do you got for us on that?
So, so are you referring to the actual organization Living Classroom, or what a lot of people are going towards in the fall?
Honestly, both. I was going to segue, but since you set it up that way, let's, I was going to reply to where you were going to go with it. So
sure.
Let's go with both.
Okay. So just for context, my husband and I we've been doing little short trips on weekends here and there. And this past weekend, we're in Philly. We drove down to Baltimore and enjoyed the Inner Harbor, enjoyed some seafood. And we're walking along and I see this really cool, it looks like an outward bound type of wilderness course. It's called the Living Classroom. And I looked it up. It's a foundation, and they seem to be really cool because they seem to be embedded in different parts of Baltimore's African-American community, especially for kids who are underserved. But what I loved about it is that their whole model is learning by doing. And that is something, there was a chapter of my career, I was a professor for 16 years. One of the reasons why I exited higher education was I wasn't convinced anymore that we were doing it the right way. The lack of practicality, the lack of learning by doing, right? Yeah. The lack of the constant save
the great passion of my life, Natalie. I went the other way, right? My mix made me very poor at school, but man, I was really struggling because I was living a life where I was like, I have so much admiration for my friends that are doing this, but why are they 29 and can't do anything?
Right.
Like, they can speak to everything.
Right.
And of course it's a mix, but it's interesting to see that your path went the other way.
Yes. My path went the other way. And I always had exposure to the practicality. For example, my mom taught us how to sew when I was 8 years old.
So you had other aspects of your life where you were seeing it. And so in that juxtaposition.
Oh yeah. I mean, I grew up in a proletariat, blue collar community in Philly. On my block, there were cops and nurses. My dad was pharmaceutical sales. We were kind of bourgeoisie aspirational.
Yeah. Of that crew.
Exactly. So I appreciate and understand the value of knowing how. And I think right now we're seeing a swing back to learning by doing. I've been predicting for a while that we're going to see a return to an apprenticeship model.
Me too.
Not the kind of apprentices of the medieval times, but our kids, the centennials, are really questioning the ROI of higher ed.
Natalie, on my entire soul, as a parent, if my 11-year-old daughter wanted to do X, she sat down because eventually she'll be old enough. But and there was to me, who are the 11 people in the world that are doing it the way you admire it the most? And I'd rather pay that individual for my daughter to get as close to the sun as I call it. I would much rather pay that person. And you can't say that. You have to be very careful when you deliver that sentence because there's an entire movement. And I respect this movement as well of like, let's not take advantage of people with internships and this and that. And I'm sitting here saying, forget internships. I'm willing to pay people because I believe so much in what you're saying.
Well, listen, check it out. Why did my parents sacrifice so much so that my sister and I could get this outstanding education in a very wonderful liberal arts institution?
To advance your life and happiness. That was the path, and where you're going is there might be an alternative path now.
Correct.
For this. Exactly.
Correct. And part of it was to access a social network that, quite frankly, the way our society is structured, I would not be able to access as easily.
By the way, Natalie, I'm sorry because you're just so fucking sharp and bright. It's like it's my bad habits of cutting off come in when I'm invigorated. You know what I've been thinking a ton about?
What?
With back to social networks, mixing with people. I mean, this COVID thing and us getting used to doing things remote, it is going to shift so much.
Yes.
I actually, people talk about it lightweight. Where are people going to live? Where are people going to move? I think it's real. Like, I'm very practical and I'm doing things like, I used to fly to London, for my office in a meeting, and I would kill myself, 6 a.m. flight, meeting, 6 a.m., but I had to quote unquote be there. Now, I still have to be there, but I might go for a week And I might go to Paris for I grew up in the wine business. I haven't been, those wineries want me to come all the time. Wait a minute, I can do my entire 2 days in New York virtually from France,
right?
And maybe show my kids, like the whole game's got a potential of changing.
Absolutely. And it's really helping us to rewire and redesign our relationship with time. It's helping us to pause and to really identify what really matters. I think for those, I mean, let's face it, there's going to be casualties in learning.
Yes.
And I'm much more interested in the future of learning during this time, because not every kid has parents who'll be able to be
Correct.
accessible and help them through this time of learning.
Some people live in places where they don't even have computers or internet
correct.
or Wi-Fi. All the things that people just take for granted that they do.
Take for granted. So I think that the value of this time is to reevaluate rituals that we have, assumptions we have about what it means to learn, about what's required for success. Even as a university professor, first of all, I was never convinced that every undergrad in front of me actually should be there.
Right.
And secondly, higher education is not necessarily the ticket for a happy, successful life at all, right? So then it requires us to revisit, for me, what does it mean to be human? And what's our real added value? It's creativity. And anything that advances the ball, to use a sports metaphor, for us to up our creativity quotient, to up what it means to be creative, whether you're an entrepreneur, a techie, a farmer, whatever, do that. And learning just rote things to pass a test is not necessarily going to be that. So I am passionate about helping people at this moment in this time to navigate complexity with complexity. And creativity is this cool, complex system that's toggling between wonder and rigor to solve problems.
I love that. What's like 2 or 3 bullet points that parents, students, like what have we not touched on that's on top of your brilliant mind that might be able to help people with some hot takes that they could dig into a little bit more after this?
Well, I do want to build maybe a little bit more just on this point about this is an opportunity to redesign our relationship with time and to figure out new rituals. One of the things that's actually a truth is that we always have the opportunity to redesign our relationship with time. And now it's just in front of us, and we're going through what we call a Groundhog Day every day. So that might be creating better boundaries between you and your clients. I've been advising and encouraging organizations to create those boundaries by tiptoeing into it and saying, maybe on Tuesdays, we only do Zoom meetings between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. But we need that counterpoint of rest, getting lost, wander, so we can recharge and reorient the neural synapses of our brains. And a practical takeaway is to become a clumsy student of something right now. So while I studied dance since age 4, I'm now a clumsy student of ballroom. So I study tango and the foxtrot and salsa. I just posted a very clumsy video of me doing salsa the other night. And here's what happens when we are clumsy students. Number one, you have to have a tremendous sense of humor about yourself.
Yes.
Secondly,
humility.
Say it again.
Humility.
Tremendous humility. You don't know it all.
It leads to so much happiness.
Yes, it does.
Gosh, please, can we make humility cool? If we can make humility cool, people would be so much happier and would learn so much more. Oh my God, so much more.
We must lead with humility when we're clumsy students. We've got to be curious. We've got to ask better and different questions. We've got to be better at improvising. So I've become a clumsy student of the tango and foxtrot, and also of pickling vegetables right now. But all of that transfers over into our work, and it's really important to do.
You've been amazing. I would love, please hit me up. I'd love to chat some more with you.
Awesome. Thank you.